This was a bit of a challenge for me to get into this talk. Not to get into it, but to really understand it. What Gail just mentioned a moment ago and the themes that she touched on about love being not something that we just do one time, not just a feeling. These are things, of course, that I've heard before and things that I've experienced in life and come to realize, it's a work that we do on a regular basis. So my mind got to thinking more around, or rather, I was led to thinking more about how do we put ourselves in a capacity to love? We don't always have that capacity to love, or rather, we always have the capacity to love, but sometimes we feel empty, right? Let me explain what I mean. Anyone ever scroll through social media? Maybe I'm just the only one, and I would see things like what's going on in Darfur, what's going on in Congo, what's going on in Israel and Palestine, issues happening here in the United States, various issues, missing persons, uh, people being trafficked, all sorts of just not wonderful things. And they're all calling to our heartstrings. Now, of course, they're looking for help, awareness to share, out with the public. They're looking for donations. They're looking for people to get active and do something about these various causes. And I got to thinking, as I'm scrolling, why do I stop at some and just keep scrolling past others? And they're all important issues, right? And it sounds weird to say that out loud because some of the stuff that we see is pretty, it's pretty horrible. I'll just say it like that. It's horrible. There's some horrible stuff out there. It is what it is. And I got to thinking, well, if I had enough money, I would give to all of these causes. And then I got to thinking about it a little bit more. Well, how would you give to those causes if even you had all the money in the world and you kept scrolling past it? You didn't know it was a cause. And so it had nothing to do with the money. It had to do with the attention I was giving to that cause. It had to do with, is my cup full enough to share with all these different things? I got to thinking about how do I fill that cup? So when we talk about love as a daily commitment, I would like to focus on our preparation for that commitment. How do we fulfill that commitment? So I want to start by sharing a story with you. Uh, it's beautiful. I didn't almost cry when I read it, but uh, you might have a different you might have a different response. But this is a familiar story that I'm going to share with you, and I got this from spiritual passages. There was a man named Paul. He would take his wife out to lunch every week. Same diner, same booth, same routine. But his wife, Elaine, was living with Alzheimer's. And every morning, Paul would lay out her clothes in order, not because she couldn't dress herself, but because love had become intentional for him. One day, they were sitting at their usual table, and Paul noticed that her sweater was on inside out. Now, years ago, he might have corrected her about it, but now he just noticed and he just chose to love. The waitress came over and said, Paul, the waitress came over, excuse me, and Paul said, "Hey, today is our 57th wedding anniversary." They've known this waitress for a long time. She knows them. He knows them. They know each other. So Elaine looks up and she said, "Is it?" And he smiled and he said, "Yes, sweetheart, it is. This is our 57th anniversary." And they ordered, like they always did, same thing, Cobb salad, tomato soup. But that day, the diner had run out of tomato soup. It was something very, very small, but for Elaine, it had become overwhelming. She became confused. She became very upset. And then she started to cry. And she said, Paul, I want to go home. I want to go home. So Paul didn't argue. He just got up. He didn't insist. He didn't try to correct. He just paid the bill and took her home. And on the way home, she just kept asking, "What day is it?" And finally, he said, "It's January 7th." And she just paused for a second and said, "That's the day we got married." He said, "Yes, it is." They got home. Paul went into the kitchen, searched through all the cabinets, found a can of tomato soup. Love remembers even when the memory fades. So he's preparing it and he's hearing music. And Elaine was a music teacher during her working years. And he walks into the living room, and there was Elaine there just playing the piano, playing their song, and playing it perfectly. So, from somewhere deeper than memory, from identity and from this true source of love, she was able to produce this. He just sat beside her, took her hand, and kissed it. And he looked at her, and she looked at him. She said, "I love you, Paul." And he says, "I can see that." So, even in her state, Elaine had a fullness of love within her to give from. She was the one who objectively needed the care. But even in her state, she was still had something in her cup to give. That's a beautiful thing. That's what really struck me. That's what love looks like as a daily commitment, not when it's easy, not when it's convenient, but when we choose it again and again and again and again, just as Gail said. So, how can we make this a daily commitment and not just something we feel, but something that we do? Since we already know that love is more than just a fleeting feeling, since we already know that it's daily practice that reveals who we truly are. I want to stop for a quick second here. Gail and I did not coordinate, mostly my fault. I've been busy this week. We did not coordinate at all on her reading and prayer and my talk. And they are so in sync, it's unreal. That is a beautiful thing. I just want to say thank you again. When we listen to spirit, we just sync up and these things happen. And it's a beautiful thing. Now, a lot of us, and when I say a lot of us, a lot of times I'm talking about me, we understand love in pieces. So we show our love in our work. We're busy working, our careers, ministry, whatever we do, we're showing our love through our work. We show love to our families, even those who we're doing it just because we're expected to do it. You know who those relatives are. Let's keep it real. All right. And we show love to those who are closest to us, our friends, our family, and other groups and organizations that we belong to. But when it comes down to making love as a daily commitment, we have to ask, what is the basis for it? We have to understand that love has to be grounded in our being. And it can't be a daily commitment if it's only a feeling, right? Because there are times you don't feel like doing things, right? There are weekends, there are just days where you're like, "You know what? I am not leaving this couch. I don't feel like doing anything." And that's not in particular reference to the showing of love, but sometimes you just want to rest. You don't want to do things that, even though you feel like you have to do them, we know that feelings come and go. So love has to become a way of being. It has to be something more than we just practice, because we understand that love's not just this fleeting emotion, but it's a way of acting, a way of existing, and a way of showing up in the world. But we've established that we can only give from our overflow. Just like when we're scrolling social media and we see all these different things going on in the world, we want to give to them all, but we can only give from our overflow. Anyone ever seen stories of or been in a situation, you lived in a community where you saw a parent or parents in a tough financial situation? You may have seen stories about it. You may have experienced it yourself. The parents out working, parents or parent, and many times it's one parent out working multiple jobs. The kids are at home, little supervision. And we know where that heads in many communities. It heads to crime and all kinds of other, situations that aren't great. And my wife's a teacher, and I've heard herself and other teachers, and they share their thoughts when they encounter different, students from these types of backgrounds. And they always say the same thing about the parents, about how they seem overwhelmed or they're just resigned. And I thought to myself, could their spiritual cup be empty? It's not that they don't care. Not that they don't care about their children. They're out working a bunch of jobs. They're out buying their kids everything they think they should have, right? Whether we agree with what they buy or not. But the point is that they're showing love in their own way, form, and fashion. But is their spiritual cup empty? A lot of times, from our privileged position, we sit back and we look at others and how they show love and how they show up for those in their family, and we say that's not enough. But we're not in their position. So, in us showing love as a daily commitment, we also have to be cognizant that others can show love only if their cup is full, only from their vantage point, and to reserve our judgment because when we judge, we are basically creating a prayer. We were all taught, especially those of us who are practitioners, we were all taught that we need to ask others for when we pray for them. We can't just assume what they want and pray for that person. We need to ask their permission, right? If we want something specific in their lives, but we walk around with a prayer about this person's not doing that and this person's not doing what they're supposed to do in the way it should be done. And we're carrying around a prayer because we are making judgments on others. And I think it's important that we make sure that when we're praying for others, that when we're in the process of filling our own cup, that we do not place judgment on others. Of course, we want to love the world. We want to care, show up, be present. Now, many of us are not empty because we've given too much. But we're empty because we're not filling ourselves enough. Just like that parent in that tough financial situation, there's a lot of us who are just not filling ourselves enough. We're not giving ourselves the fuel, the spiritual fuel that we need to keep on going, to keep caring, and to keep loving. And the root cause, as I believe, as I have read and studied here, has been our own self concept. So we have to be honest with ourselves. Many of us still walk around with this hidden belief within us, a belief that says that I am not enough. If you are not loving yourself fully and truly, how can you love others? How can you give someone something that you don't have? You're walking down the street, you have no money in your pocket, and someone who is homeless says, I want, could you give me $2? And you don't have $2. How can you give them $2? You don't have $2. And the same with it spiritually. How could you give out love if you're not constantly filling yourself with that which you want to give? Neville Goddard, he makes this really clear. He says, to feel I am unworthy is to deny the divine within you. So when we walk around rejecting ourselves, we're not rejecting the personality. We're not rejecting Gail. We're not rejecting Jason. We're not rejecting Elaine. We're rejecting that presence, that real self, that God within us. And that is the source that we must pull from in order to fill our cup. So, how can you pull from the cup and reject it at the same time? See, our life is going to reflect our self concept. Neville says your concept of yourself is the cause of your phenomena in life. So, if you don't feel worthy, you will just feel empty. You won't experience a life that you will experience a life that reflects that emptiness. Van Zant says that everything that has happened to you is a reflection of what you believe about yourself. And those experiences that we have in our lives, they feed back into us. And we turn around and we give that out to the world. Many of us, even in this teaching, we still walk with that illusion of separation. We have to constantly remind ourselves that the false belief in separation is a blockage to our becoming. When we feel separated from God, when we feel separated from love, when we feel separated from our own self worth. In many cases, we build up walls, particularly from past pains, from past hurts, relationships with others, expecting not quite expecting the best because things didn't work out the last time. We build these walls to protect ourselves from pain, but at the same time, we also block love. A lot of times, I think we also look in the wrong place to try to fill our cup. We try to fill our cup through people by applause, by recognition, by validation. But I like to call that moonlight because it's not the real source. When I was scribbling my notes for today, I was sitting in the backyard and the sun had already gone down. And so the moon was there. And there was a little bit of light in the backyard. So I wanted to sit out there because it was warm. I'm getting tired of cold weather. And so I'm sitting out there and it's nice and warm. And there's moonlight up there and it's enough to see, but I can't see very well. Right, it's moonlight, it's not sunlight. I can hear the animals around me scurrying around, but I can't see any of them. The moon is shining, but we know the moon doesn't have any light of its own. It just reflects the sun. That's kind of like that external validation. When we try to get validation from other people, that's moonlight, right? The source is the sun, or that source is God. And that source is that kingdom that is established within us. So, constantly reminding ourselves it's great to get recognition from others outside of us, but our true source is not that. Our true source is God. That is the place where we fill our cup. That is where we fill our cup. And it's already within us. It's about turning it on. God is the source, and love is simply our nature. Ernest Holmes says that love is the outpouring of universal spirit through its desire to express itself as creation, reminding us that we are divine beings and that we should never belittle ourselves. So when we diminish ourselves, we are denying our own divine authorship. So look at this in an objective way. I want to give, I want to give in some way or ways that make the world a better place, that make a world a place for a home for all people. So what I need to do is to go through a process of making sure that I'm loving myself, that I'm caring for myself, so that I have enough to give to others. That is the filling of the cup that I speak of. It is the inner work that we need to go through. Because when our cup is filled by our way of thinking, by our way of prayer, and by our study, by us holding the highest thoughts about ourselves, it allows us to change that concept of ourself. And by doing that on a regular basis, we begin to establish a habit of doing that. It is a process of reminding ourselves that we're already worthy. You are already worthy. You're not trying to become worthy. You are already worthy. Our job is to simply reveal it. Joel Goldsmith says, your real self is the Christ, and that self lacks nothing. And through love, love then activates the law. The law is that end result. That's something we want to make happen in the world. That could be everything from giving and supporting a cause to helping our family to even building a company that does something wonderful in the world, building a ministry, building a nonprofit, whatever the case is. That stuff is driven by love, right? It's driven by a deep desire to know, to reveal who you truly are. So love activates the law. This is where love really becomes practical. Love is pointing the way, and the law makes it possible. But that start of that process is always loving yourself. Life is always going to reflect back to us what we put into it. It is important to remember that we do not need permission to be worthy. Holmes says there is a power for good in the universe and you can use it. Well, we actually must use it if this is the path that we choose to walk down. So, how do we start working love as a practice? One, it's patience. Practicing patience first with yourself. In many cases, we condemn ourselves. We're our harshest critic. Be patient with yourself, and in turn, you'll find yourself being more patient with others. Number two, listening. Let's start with ourselves. We talk about listening to others. Are you listening to yourself? Not conceitedly, but are you listening to your body, how it responds to certain situations? Are you listening to your body at the beginning of the day? Are you truly sitting in the silence, to hear what is being brought to you? Are you truly listening? That self-care is that first step that opens us up to be able to listen to others. Forgiveness, starting with ourselves, forgiving ourselves for the dumb thing that we said last week. We all know what we're talking about, right? That you keep obsessing over that nobody else is even thinking about anymore. Or something that you did 10 years ago where you are not your highest and best self and you are still holding on to that as a symbol of who you are. It's not. That was a moment in time. Okay? Let it go. That's for all of us. We need to forgive ourselves and forgive those who have trespassed against us. We've all heard that one, many of us growing up. Letting go of that hurt that you've been holding on to from somebody who's not even thinking about it anymore. And of course, daily acts of care, starting with yourself. How are you preparing yourself physically for the day? We all have done rituals, consciously and unconsciously, that make us feel cared for. Do those things that make you feel cared for in the way we dress, in the way we prepare ourselves so that we feel good as we start our day. That way we can provide those same daily acts of care and kindness to other persons. This is a simple thing, but I was cutting my front lawn, and when I trim the edges, the clippings, some of the clippings fall into the street, and so of course I got to sweep it up and put it in a bag so we can I can haul that stuff off. But both of my neighbors on both sides of me had cut their grass sometime during the week, did the same thing, and the clippings were on the road. And so I just went on both sides and swept them all up and put them in the trash can. I was already out there, so why not just put them in the trash can? Didn't even think too much about it. But because I was taking care of my own lawn, I was providing my own self-care. It made it very easy to take care of those to the left of me and those of the right of me. It's a simple, small thing, but it's I think illustrates what I'm driving home here. Now, when we do these things, now it's not dependent upon our mood. It's not depending upon some fleeting feeling or emotion, but instead it becomes something natural that we do on a regular basis. This is a choice that we are making so that we remain open. Love is not something that we acquire. Remember that it is something that we reveal. Every time that we love, we are truly remembering who we are. So, for that daily commitment, how do we live? We commit to loving ourselves daily. I know that might sound a little conceited, right? We're talking about loving as a daily commitment, and you're talking about loving yourself. We got to start with self. It is not selfish. We must take care of the temple first. We must love ourselves daily. Number two, we have to release self-condemnation for whatever reason. That is a thing in our society. I don't know if that is like that all around the world, but it's a thing here where we are constantly pushing and condemning ourselves. Yeah, we want to keep ourselves motivated. We want to be ambitious to go after the things that we want, but we must be careful about the conversations we have to ourselves about ourselves because that becomes a prayer. Us walking around constantly thinking I'm clumsy, thinking I'm this, thinking I'm that. And we start to see those things manifest. So releasing the self condemnation is so important because it provides us with that spiritual confidence. It provides us with that love and reverence and interconnectedness with the God within. Number three, seeing ourselves as source. Always remembering that God is source. Excuse me, saying God is source, not ourselves, but saying God is source because God is within us. That is the source and the substance of our supply that we say every single time that we give here at CSL Metro. God is the source and substance of my supply. That's in all things, and most importantly, spiritual things. And by doing these things, we fill our cup on a daily basis, making it easier for us to give of our love, to give of our time, to give of our treasure, and to be able to sustain in the most difficult times. You are entitled to be happy. You're entitled to be loved. You're entitled to be successful. That is from the power of your subconscious mind. So I will end with this. You and I are not here on this earthly plane to chase love. You and I are here to practice it. You and I are here to reveal it. You and I are here to be it. Because as Gail has taught us, love is not something that we give. Love is something that we are. So I'd like to end with this closing treatment. There is but one mind, one law. There is but one mind, one life, and one presence. There is one power in this universe. It is limitless, unconditional. It is ever giving. It knows no rejection, no separation, no exclusion, only perfect acceptance. And I know that I am one with this infinite presence. I am not separate from love. I am an expression of it. I am created from acceptance, sustained by acceptance, and surrounded by acceptance at all times. I now recognize that any belief in rejection is not truth. It is simply a shadow of past perception. It has no power, it has no authority, no permanence in my consciousness, and I release it now. I release every memory, every imprint, every expectation of rejection, known and unknown. They dissolve in the light of truth. In their place, I accept a new knowing. I know I am welcomed by life. I am received with openness and respect. I am valued. I am appreciated. I am embracing this power wherever I go. Divine love goes before me, preparing the way. Every interaction is guided. Every connection is aligned. Every experience reflects my true nature. I feel this now, not as hope, but as a living reality within me. And I give thanks that this shift is complete. I trust the law to act upon this word and to bring it into full expression. I trust that I am not rejected by life, I am recognized by it. And I release this treatment into the law, knowing it is done. And so it is. And so ends the lesson.